Good morning and good afternoon. My name is Sandra Masters, your producer for today, and I'm super excited to have Amy Franco from Impact Instruction for our topic today, designing sales training for the new economy. And I'll introduce her in just a little bit, but we usually do some housekeeping items, and we have a special appearance by Suma Elwell, who's going to talk about the upcoming site conference in Spokane, Washington. So thank you to everyone who is here early. Diane, Lorna, Marcia, Nancy, Paula, Trevor, you guys are great. And thanks also, I'm going to share my screen for those who shared your tips for new trainers. And I'm going to show you how you can download the handout. If you don't know how to use the GoToWebinar tool, I'll show you how to download this little list here for tips for new trainers. And we did get a few people respond to Amy's questions too about your challenges in business and in general and in training specifically, sales training specifically. So we do appreciate you contributing in that way. So people are still rolling in, and if you know how to use GoToWebinar and you want to type in where you're calling in from, what the weather's like, what kind of work you do, or if you want to tell us what your number one big challenge is in the business world or in training specifically, you're welcome to do that in the question box. All right, so look at people are still rushing in. We're about a minute to the top of the hour. And we're just doing announcements right now. You're not missing anything for those that are just connecting on the audio. Next month, April 27th, we're going to do a more in-depth site conference preview, and it's for you to get to know who you're going to be with for 4 days in Spokane, Washington. And we've got a great program lined up for you, and you'll get to hear about all of the special sessions, learning labs, keynotes, networking events, and get to know a little bit more about Spokane. If you've never been there, I mean, that was one of my favorite cities when I traveled all over the U.S. It's just so beautiful. It's near Coeur d'Alene, like within 30 minutes of the Coeur d'Alene area in Idaho, and I would definitely sign up for this one and not miss it. All right, for those just joining, and we never assume that everyone knows how to use the GoToWebinar tool, so I want to show you a few things. So if you're using a PC, you're probably seeing an orange arrow on the right-hand side of your screen, and that orange arrow is what opens and closes the control panel. And if you're having trouble with your audio, you can switch to the telephone. It gives you a telephone number. I like to show people right away, if you click on the view menu at the top and uncheck this auto hide control panel, then it will allow you to see this little question box that keeps it open during the whole session. And if you need to switch to the telephone, make sure you put in your audio pin, because we like our audience to share their thoughts and ideas at the end of the session. So I hope that you will enter your audio pin, and that will allow me to unmute your line. And then use this question box now. Type in where you're calling in from, what kind of work you do, and what's your biggest challenge right now in the business world or in training, sales training specifically. And then that handout is in the handout section in your control panel for the tips for new trainers that all of you shared with each other. So I really do appreciate that. Hi, Diane from Northbrook, Illinois. Thanks for weighing in. All right, and then we might use the raise hand feature, which is on your control panel. I call this a little grab handle area, so we might use that during the session as well. So again, thanks for being here early for the session, and I want you to know the Society of Insurance Trainers and Educators is excited that you're here with us today. We want you to consider ways for you to get more involved with SITE, whether it's by joining SITE as a member, or if you are a member, finding a way to grow more with SITE by getting involved. SITE has an unlimited benefits of membership, and as you can see on the screen, we'd love for you to get connected today. It's a great place to network with people in a similar role as yours, and professional networking has a way of becoming a great tool when you least expect it. So the relationships you sow today may yield success in the future. Visit our website, insurancetrainers.org, for membership information, and you can contact us if you have any questions. We would love for you to join us. So hi, Deborah from Texas and Leo from the UCLA Extension. All right, engaging online learners. Yeah, #1 challenge. Thank you, Leo. Keep on entering into the question box your challenges, where you're calling in from. Don't be shy. We want you to get interactive right away. Before I introduce Amy Franco, I do want to introduce Suma Elwell, who's going to talk a little bit about the upcoming annual conference in Spokane, Washington. So welcome, Suma.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, everyone. And I am really happy you were able to join us today. And our 2018 annual conference is in Spokane, Washington. And I have to agree with Sandy when I say Spokane is a beautiful place to visit. But that's not the only reason why you want to come to Spokane. This is a conference that I really highly recommend if you are in the training and development industry, and especially this is the only conference for insurance training professionals. CITE is an association just geared towards insurance training and educators, and so if you have already attended one of our annual conferences, you know the value of this conference, and if you haven't, join us. And the good thing about registering today is you get the early bird savings of $200. So in addition to our conference, which is on June 24th and 26th, we also are offering the Train the Trainer session on June 22nd and 23rd. And CITE partners with the institutes to provide you this certification. If you register today for the Train the Trainer session, you get an additional $100 off your registration cost. So all in all, between your Train the Trainer discount and your early bird discount for registering today, you get a total of $300 discount. Now that is just the savings, the benefit of registering and saving today, but the return on investment on this conference is really higher than the savings that you are going to make. In fact, our 2017 attendees said that 98% of them said that the conference provided them timely and relative sessions. So I am not going to steal the thunder from Brad Gucha, who will be presenting all the exciting sessions that he has planned for you, and he will be doing this in our April webinar, and then in May you actually get to get a sneak peek from our presenters on what other sessions they will be presenting on. So stay tuned and join us to learn more about that. Also visit our website at www.insurancetrainers.org to learn more about the annual conference, as well as to register for the conference. And a quick note for all those who are planning to register for the Train the Trainer certification, our deadline for this is April 6th, because we do start the online session on April 16th. So the institutes has to have enough time to mail you the materials for the certification program and the book. So that is why our deadline is April 6th. I would highly recommend, if you haven't taken the certification, this is a great certification to have under your tool belt as a trainer. So just out of curiosity, Sandy, what would be the best, raising hands or a chat box to say how many of those who are attending the webinar today, how many of you have already registered for the program?
Yeah, go ahead and raise your hand. It's a little hand on the grab handle of your control panel if you are registered and planning on attending the conference. Or maybe raise your hand if you're thinking that you're going to check it out and see what's going on there. All right, so I see John. Awesome. Anyone else? All right, well, hopefully we'll get some more people. Okay, Deb, I'm glad you're going to be there. Awesome. All right. Thank you so much for that. Very good. Well, if you would like more information, please do visit insurancetrainers.org. Hi, Nikki. Glad you're going to be there as well. Thanks. And Suma, thank you so much for giving us a little bit more information on the Spokane, Washington conference.
So thank you. And also one quick thing, Sandy, for those of who are coming, in the chat box, if they could share what is the one best thing they like about this conference and how do they view their return on investment on this conference. If they could just share that with us, and so that you can share that with all the others who are on this call, so they can see what their peers are thinking about this and how they feel about the conference. So.
Thank you so much, Suma. I know that I attended my first conference, and it was in Boca Raton, Florida in 1998. And so I'm coming up on my 20-year anniversary of attending these site conferences. I haven't been able to make all of them. I think Steve Anderson has the record for attending mostly all of them. But they're great conferences, and the friendships that you make in the networking, and it really, throughout your career, it just is one place where you can go to get answers to challenges and problems that you're experiencing, and someone is going to know someone that can help you if they can't help you, and everyone is so helpful. And Deborah says insurance-specific training information and networking with like-minded trainers to share solutions. So Nikki says real-life application and advice from colleagues, so thank you for that. So awesome. Well, now it's my pleasure. I'm going to change presenter control to Amy Franco, and I'll unmute her line. And we welcome back to site Amy Franco. So thank you, Amy, for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. It is a pleasure to be back. And if I could make a plug for two plugs for the conference. First, the location, absolutely beautiful. I third everything that Sandy and Suma said about the location. And as lifelong learners ourselves, there's no better investment that we could make in ourselves. So I've gone to site conferences in the past myself. My company has been a part of it, and I don't know if I'll be able to make it this year based on scheduling, but it is absolutely fantastic. And Brad Gutcher is someone I know well, and his session in April will be great. Well, welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. Again, this is Amy Franco. I'm really looking forward to spending this time with you today. So if you are a sales enablement professional or an L&D professional or talent professional in some way, shape, or form, or in a sales leadership role, this topic that we're covering today is something that should be important to all of us, because the impact that we can have on our organization, especially when it comes to building modern sales organizations, regardless of our role, we have the opportunity to make that impact through designing sales training, excuse me, for the new sales economy. Very briefly about me and why I'm talking about this topic. I spent the first part of my career in a sales role with IBM and one of its spin-off companies, Lenovo. So I was a quota-carrying sales professional in the tech world. And then I took this big 180-degree pivot into entrepreneurship and the learning field 10 years ago. And that's a whole other conversation, but that happened 10 years ago when I launched Impact Instruction Group. I'm a lifelong learner, and so now I get to combine all of these things together into learning that focuses on sales and leadership. And today I spend the majority of my time in the insurance field and in the professional services field, also in technology. So those are the organizations that I spend a lot of time with, helping them build sales and leadership skills. The content that you're seeing today is based on my upcoming book, The Modern Seller. It'll be coming out in June of this year. And we're going to scratch the surface on some modern sales dimensions that we need to be building in our sales organization. And then the book will go into much greater depth. It has a leadership lens and a talent lens as well. Very much a how-to designed to help all of us, whether we are in the learning space or we're in the sales space, and those who support them to help build modern organizations. So with that, let's go ahead and get to it. In our time today, here is what we're going to cover. We are going to cover some of the challenges that are creating chaos with our decision makers and also within the own work that we're doing, our own industry, and the expectations of sales organizations, how that has changed. We're going to define a modern sales organization and a modern sales producer. We're going to dig into 5 modern dimensions that we want to be cultivating regardless of our role in the organization. And then for each of those, I'm going to leave you with a practical strategy that you can use today, specifically in implementing it into your existing sales training initiatives. So before we dive in, I would like to get to know all of you just a little bit more and your roles in your organization. So Sandy, if you wouldn't mind just teeing up that poll for us, and I will also put it up on screen here in case we need it.
All right, we try to get 90% voting. So
all right.
Let's see if we can get to 90%. Super simple question.
Yep. So what's your role in your organization? Are you more in the sales side of things as a professional or a sales leader? Are you in sales enablement, or are you a sales enablement leader? Or are you in L&D as a professional or as a leader? I'd like to get a sense of who's on the line today.
Okay, last chance to weigh in. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, let me share these results. We got close to our 90%.
Excellent. Excellent. Let me see the results here.
So it looks like 10% sales professional or sales leader, 5% sales enablement, and 85% L&D leaders.
All right, so we're all together here. Thank you for that, and it's nice to know we have a mix of people on the line, and especially some of our sales enablement folks who are really specifically focused in that area. So glad to know that we have everybody from these different areas on the line. So with that, let's go ahead and we'll move on here. So many times when I do these webinars, and this time was no different, we put out a quick question to ask, what are some of the biggest challenges that you are facing? And the things that you see on screen here are the ones that I hear the most often. And there were actually a couple of additional ones from this group that I'll share with you as well. So just to call out a couple that are on this screen here. The need to reinforce sales training and implementing successful programs. That's a huge challenge that we face in our role. Our sales teams needing new client acquisition. So that's one I hear very, very regularly. Also things like market contraction and the margins at which we are able to sell. There's so much disruption in our industry right now, in the insurance industry. It absolutely affects the size and breadth of the market, and also the margins at which we can, our sales teams can sell their products and services. Demographic changes. So looking at our organization and the different generations in the workforce. So demographic changes internally are affecting our ability to, for knowledge transfer and for ensuring that we have continuity of that knowledge in addition to building new capabilities. And sales teams being overwhelmed. I think that's one I hear all the time. We're overwhelmed. And I think in our roles, we're overwhelmed as well in prioritizing what we need to be creating for our sales teams to help them be successful. A couple of others that were very specific to this group in terms of industry challenges, talking about unprecedented catastrophes that really hits the business hard and changes our decisions sometimes about how we go to market and where some of our investments are. Looking at the more affluent segment and how do we attract customers who are underserved by mass market companies. So looking at who our customer and who our client really is and making sure that we are attracting the right prospect and the right client in order to create the right growth in our organization. And then just a couple of other things, focusing on solutions that address client problems, creating meaningful relationships. And then one more that's really stood out to me, specific to a training challenge, presenting pertinent material, so choosing what material is pertinent and making sure that we're always delivering it in an engaging and meaningful way. I think that challenge will never go away. No matter what we are teaching on, that challenge will always be there, and it's a good challenge to have. So let me add a couple more to our challenges, or what I like to call trends creating chaos. And many of these are more business-oriented versus training-oriented, but they affect how we have to think about what we're training on and even how we are designing our materials. How engaging are they? How relevant are they? There are 7 that you see on screen here, and in the interest of time, I'm going to hit on 3 of them. But at the end of this conversation, I will let you know how you can get the slides so that you can get the additional information on all 7 of these. So one I'm going to touch on is escalating buyer control. When I was doing my interviews for the book, if there was one theme that came up over and over again, is that our prospects and our clients, they have more access to more information than ever before. Now, information doesn't necessarily mean it's the right information, that it's the right data, but they are controlling more of how they interact with our sellers, with our territory managers, with our agents, whatever that might be. The buyer is taking control of the process more than ever before. And many times they are pretty far down the path before they will engage our sales organizations or our agents. So what that means for us in our roles in training and development is, are we helping our sales folks, our agents, are we helping them to build the skills to help stay in front of that? And to help the agents and our territory managers, are we giving them the skills to stay in front of that? And are we helping them to be able to deliver insights with the data and information that our buyers are finding on their own? So it changes the way that we need to look at the types of skills that we're building and the way that we have to skill up our sales organizations. So escalating buyer control is one. Another one is the ROI Speedway, and let me give you an example of this from my own life. I was working with a client maybe 3 or 4 months ago, and I was with the decision makers, chief sales officer, and the president of a bank that I was looking to work with, and we were talking about training offerings. Now, as I'm telling this story, think about your own territory managers or your agents having conversations with their clients, their prospects. So I'm sitting across the table from these 2 decision makers, and I'm sharing information about sales training. We're talking about ROI. We're talking about all the business value. And she asked me a question that's a really important question, and it's something that I know that our sales organizations are being asked. And here's what she said. She's like, Amy, I have to be able to go to the president of this organization, corporate, and demonstrate to them how I'm going to deliver ROI with this investment in the next 90 days. Whereas in the past, you may have had 6 months or a year or longer to demonstrate return on investment for the products or services that you're selling. Our prospects and clients are working in a quarterly business anymore, and they have to be able to demonstrate ROI more quickly and with more impact than ever before. Your territory managers, your agents are dealing with the same thing. The last thing that I'll share is a trend creating chaos, which is decision by committee. There was some research that the Conference Executive Board did a number of years ago. And what they did is they looked at a number of different selling situations. And what they were trying to get to was understanding the influence behind decision making when it came to specifically complex opportunities. And one of the things that they uncovered was the number of people involved in a decision has gone up significantly over the last decade or so. And the number of people involved in a decision directly has gone up to 5.4 people. So even if we don't put a lot of stock in statistics, the concept here is that more people are more involved in decisions, decision by committee, decision by consensus, which means that our territory managers, our agents, they need to be building relationships more across the organization and deeper into the organization. And they cannot just be spending time with the people that are just in their silo of decision makers, if you will, the people that we're used to spending time with who make decisions about what insurance products and services to buy. It's forcing us to get wider and to get deeper so that we can know who the influencers are, because it is not always going to be just one person who is saying yes when everybody else says no, or who says no when everybody else can say yes. So something to think about in how we are developing our training, how we're coaching our sales leaders, our sales teams, when it comes to the relationships that they're building to overcome this trend of decision by committee. So what all this means between business challenges that you've shared, trends creating chaos that I've shared, and we're only scratching the surface on some of these, and these aren't even all the trends creating chaos that are specific to your industry, such as the weather that we've talked about, or the automotive industry disrupting us, or many organizations, carriers that I talk to are very, very focused on building the commercial line side of their business to offset some of the disruption happening in personal lines. Those are even more that are adding to us. And so what this all means is we are sitting in something that I call the new sales economy. We are dealing with the new sales economy, and the sales economy that we see today is going to be different even a year from now or 5 years from now. And I'm going to define it here for you in a moment. But we have to put this new sales economy into our lexicon and into our minds as sales trainers and sales leaders, or sales training leaders, because that is the only way that we're going to be able to design and develop the right training to help our sales teams offset this and to thrive in the new sales economy. I believe the new sales economy is full of opportunity for those organizations that skill up in the right way. They will thrive, and they will be here 5 years from now. They may not look the same, but they absolutely will be here 5 years from now. So let's take a moment to define the new sales economy. What is it? The new sales economy, it's this intersection of business dynamics, so some of the things that we just talked about, technology, and cultural change. These dynamics are coming together, and they are influencing client and prospect behavior. What that means for us, for our sales organizations, and for those of us that support them, it requires new mindsets, new skill sets, and new tool sets to succeed. So that's where we all come in. The role that we play in sales enablement and in L&D, we are the ones who can bring the new mindsets, skill sets, and tool sets to help our sales organization succeed amidst all these dynamics. The question that we have to be thinking about as business professionals, as training professionals, and helping our sales organizations think about is, how will I win business and create lifetime value in the new sales economy? So this isn't an or question, this is an and question for a very important reason, because we need both. We need both if we're going to succeed. There was a study that was done in 2016 by CSO Insights, and what they did is they interviewed several hundred sales organizations, and they asked what their top sales objectives were for the year. And there was a laundry list of them, say like 20 or 30 that they could choose from. So there were 3 that I want to bring your attention to, because I think they're pertinent to our industry, to the insurance industry. 60% of these organizations, one of their top 3 sales objectives was new account acquisition. I need new customers. Interestingly enough, as I dug into this a little bit more, only 30% of these organizations had a top objective to grow existing clients. The clients that we've worked so hard to win, wanting to grow and expand in those existing clients. And interestingly enough, only 9% of these organizations had a top sales objective that was focused on renewal and reorder. I think that's very interesting to the business that we're in, considering that we live in a renewal and reorder type of environment that helps us to even out revenue streams in order to help us go after new business. So to me, there's a little bit of an imbalance there, because new account acquisition is absolutely important. But in order to succeed in the new sales economy, our sales teams also have to be very focused on growth in existing clients and in keeping that annuity renewal business. So one big aha is that our odds of winning business in existing accounts are between 60 and 70%. And our odds of winning business in a net new account is only about 10 to 20. So what if we balance this to focus on both? So we need it if we're going to win in the new sales economy, and thinking about how we're structuring our sales training to whether that sales training is focused solely on new client acquisition, or if we are balancing that out to help build skills to grow existing clients and to also continue to grow that renewal reorder business. So think about your training for a moment and your top objectives in some of your major programs, and what skills are we teaching to, and are we balancing that equation enough in order to win business and also create lifetime value, which is an expansion of business. So let's talk a little bit about the modern sales organization. We need to be building a modern sales organization. That is the answer to thriving, succeeding in the new sales economy. And this is where we get an opportunity to play a really important role in that. So as I am describing the modern sales producer, the modern sales organization, think about your sales organizations that you support as I'm sharing this. So the answer to the new sales economy is a modern sales organization that is full of modern sales producers. And a modern sales producer is someone who is recognized as a differentiator in their customer's business. They're recognized by the customer as a differentiator. The customer could not imagine their business being successful without them. The value of the product or service isn't fully recognized without that person being part of the equation. A product or service is only a product or service, but it's different and it's more valuable because of the territory manager or the agent that's a part of that process. And then lastly, the customer views them as strategic to their competitive advantage. They're strategic. They aren't just somebody selling a product or service. They are strategic, and they are a competitive secret weapon for their clients. So that's what we need to get to as a modern sales organization and modern producers, modern sellers. So I'm going to give you a couple of reality checks here. The typical sales team, again, this is research done by CSO Insights. 57.1% of salespeople achieve quota. Now, this is a general statement. It's across industry based on their research, may or may not apply directly to your teams. But this is something that even if we don't put a ton of stock in statistics, this means that almost 40%, over 40% of our sales teams are not producing to quota. They're not meeting the objectives to move the sales organization forward. So again, something to think about as we are developing sales training. Do we know the level of performance of the people in the room or the people that are on the other end of that e-learning or whatever it happens to be? So knowing the makeup of the teams that we're working with is very important. So if we look at a typical sales team, and let's say a typical sales team, let's say they have 5 people. Your teams may be larger, which means that what I'm about to share with you is only going to be amplified if you're working with a larger team. But if we have a team of 5, typically you are always going to have one rock star. One person who outshines, outperforms, they outachieve in any sales economy. They are the kind of person that says, bring it. And they always overachieve. They're typically the ones that need the least amount of management or want the least amount of management and leadership. They're your rock stars. Then you have your middles. If you can picture a bell curve, your middles, they're right there in the center. You're usually going to have 3. Your middle tier, this is your widest range of performance. Your widest range. You are going to have some that are more toward the rock star spectrum, and you're going to have others that are more toward what I call the participation trophy spectrum, which I'll get to in a moment. And this is sometimes the toughest group to gauge because we have to make some decisions about which ones we can get more toward the rock star status. But this is our biggest opportunity to move the needle when it comes to performance, our middle tier. And then lastly, we have what I call the participation trophy. These are folks honestly, they're just consistently under goal. They're consistently under goal, and typically they always have a reason why, and it usually has something to do with the new sales economy. But they're the ones that they're really tough because they are typically dragging down the rest of the team. And in a team of 5, it only really takes one. We probably all experienced that at some point in time. So there are those folks that we have some decisions to make, more or less from a talent level versus a training level. But training is affected by it on how we are going to structure and hire our teams differently, because our talent acquisition strategies and our hiring strategies have to shift as well in order to attract the right talent, that we can create more of a team that are high performing middles and rock stars. High performing middles and rock stars. This is our greatest potential for talent, and it's also our greatest potential as trainers, because part of our ROI, we're sitting on the ROI speedway just as much. We have to be able to demonstrate to our stakeholders and decision makers that the training we're creating and implementing is making a tangible difference, that it's moving the needle. These two groups, your middles and your rock stars, are your biggest opportunity to show that. So let's jump into some of the dimensions of the modern sales organization. There are 5 of them. There are 5 of them that I've uncovered in my research for the book and in interviews that I've conducted. And these are the 5 dimensions that I believe we need to be building in our sales organizations. And I would argue that we also need to be building them at large across the organization. So if you're someone participating today who maybe has responsibility not just for sales training, but you may be also responsible for leadership development, you may have other business acumen, skills training that you're responsible for in the organization, onboarding. These things apply through those lenses as well. So here are your 5. The modern sales organization, the modern organization is agile, entrepreneurial, holistic, social, and they are ambassadors. And I'm going to dig into each of these 5 in some more detail. And this is where I'm also going to give you some strategies. But these are the 5. So let's start with agile. Well, before I start with agile, let me make this point. In our role as talent professionals, sales enablement, L&D, we also need to be thinking differently about the skills that we're building in our organization, the skills and the mindsets that need to be hired for, developed, and reinforced. And these skill sets are a little different than I think what we have been used to talking to, and very specifically when it comes to sales training. We're often talking with sales leaders or individual sellers about things like prospecting, presenting, closing, negotiating. And please know that these skill sets are absolutely vital. They need to be in all of our training initiatives. These are the everyday activities, the everyday behaviors that can now be reinforced and amplified with the 5 dimensions that I'm going to dive into. These things go together. And my belief is if we focus on these 5, we can help our sales organizations get better at the everyday sales activities. One thing that I don't have time to dig into, but I would like to make a quick mention of it here. There is some research done by Mark Bonchak, who owns a company called Shift Thinking, and he's also associated with Harvard. And he has done some research and written pretty extensively on this concept called exponential thinking. And the idea is going from using exponential thinking to go from incremental results to 10xing results. And so I won't get into his research here in the interest of time, but I wanted to make a quick mention of it so that when you have some time on your own, you can dig into a little bit more of his work, excuse me, because I believe that this idea of exponential thinking and 10xing our results, we can do that by focusing on these 5 dimensions and also tying it to the everyday sales activities and everyday sales skills that are already a part of our training programs. So now let me get into these 5 dimensions. All right, so the first one is agile. A modern producer, a modern sales producer is agile. Modern producers, they're fluid thinkers. They've developed this strong comfort level with ambiguity. They know that things will always be changing. They can pivot very quickly and pivot confidently. They can mentally sort and process lots of data and then translate that into ideas that matter for their customers. And I'm going to get back to that point in a moment. Agility was something that wasn't even on the radar 10 years ago, unless you're talking about sports drills, right? The Center for Creative Leadership did some research where they analyzed side by side the top five skills of maybe about a decade or two ago, and then lined those up to skills that we are seeing a greater need for in our workforces today. And learning agility is one that made the list for the first time as a top 5 skill that needs to be built in our organizations. So this idea of building agility is something that's fairly new and may or may not be built into our sales training programs. So back to the mindset of someone who is agile. Someone who is agile has a growth mindset. And there's a large body of research, mindset research, and it's been done, and it's specifically around the concepts of fixed and growth mindsets. And this is the work of Stanford psychologist Carol Dweck. You may be familiar with some of her work. And at a basic level, here's how it works. At a basic level, those of us with growth mindsets, what we deeply believe about ourselves and how we view ourselves has a tremendous capacity to help determine our destiny of success, or if we're going in a different direction. So those of us that embrace a growth mindset, we tend to believe that our intelligence has this capacity to grow. We're constantly learning, rapid and continuous learning. And therefore, we tend to view experiences, feedback, challenges, we look at them as learning opportunities. We look at them as learning opportunities on that path to mastery. So we tend not to view things as failure, absolute success or absolute failure, or it's not an indicator that we're not smart if we fail at something. So those of us with a growth mindset are therefore, we're more likely to take risks, we learn more, and we tend to develop resilience in the face of challenges or negative outcomes. We aren't defined by the outcomes. This is important in a sales context because we often have to, quota achievement is a lagging indicator. A leading indicator are all the activities that lead up to making our quota. And sellers who are agile are able to not only focus on the right activities, but they continuously learn and they apply that learning to the next opportunity, to the next sales interaction, to the next client interaction. And therefore, they tend to be more successful. Now, all of us have a little bit of both. We have some growth, we have some fixed. But, we're humans, we are not absolute one or the other. But as you're thinking about your teams, you could probably start to think, who in those teams has growth mindset versus who might be more fixed. Your growth mindset people are typically more, they're typically more open to learning and applying new things, and they get past the discomfort of that a little bit more quickly. So here's why learning agility matters in a sales context. Because agile sellers can uncover problems that clients and prospects didn't know that existed. It is one thing to solve a problem that a client knows that they have, and that's what most salespeople excel at. Identify problem, fix problem. That's what most of us excel at. But it's another thing to be able to see problems or anticipate problems that a prospect or client didn't know exist, to kind of see around that corner, if you will, and then provide them insights to help them solve it, insights that only our sellers can provide. That's often a difference maker between winning an opportunity and losing it. If your territory managers and your agents are able to see ahead of the curve on their prospects and clients and then offer insights, they are more likely to win that business and more likely to keep it for the long term. Let's talk a little bit about what this looks like. Let's put this into practice. So for a modern seller, you know it when you see it, when they own their performance. They have ownership over their performance. Because agile sellers, they see continuous feedback. They take more ownership over their performance. And what you typically see from this, think about your training programs, you typically see more engagement. You typically see the willingness to try something new when it comes to prospecting or growing the business. They get past the discomfort from it, they learn from it, they keep trying again and again until they get it right. But they own it. So for the modern sales leader, their role is as a continuous coach for their team, and then they have the dual responsibility of their team and themselves. They have to focus on their own continuous development. Sometimes our sales leaders are placed last or behind our sellers, and think about whether or not our training programs also focus on sales leadership. So you think about a weekly cadence call or maybe a one-on-one coaching where a sales leader is learning from their team members about one new thing that they're learning and the results. So creating a learning environment on weekly or one-on-one calls. So this is going to tell them a lot about the people on their team. It might also tell you a lot as trainers when you have good relationships with your sales leaders, what some of their requirements are. And when we create this learning environment as leaders, then it's something that's just expected. And then we can open the doors to more learning and more idea sharing across the team. So that might seem like something small, but most one-on-one calls, most coaching calls do not focus on what's that continual learning that's happening. And then for someone who's in modern sales enablement or modern L&D, thinking about how you can team up with a couple of these sales teams to observe, or maybe even have them gather some additional data for you that you're looking for around this topic of agility. And then you can analyze this data or your interactions for the patterns that indicate skill building opportunities that are specific to your organization. This is also going to give you insights into your talent that you wouldn't otherwise get. So we think about the modern organization also from a talent perspective. You start to get a unique lens in learning and development and sales enablement that can also inform the way the talent and hiring is approached. So that's agility. It's agility in practice. So the next modern skill set, the next modern dimension is entrepreneurial. A modern seller, a modern sales producer is entrepreneurial. And the mindset of this is the mindset of a startup. We all know people that they do not see themselves as employees. They see themselves as owners of their book of business. They are the founder, they're the CEO, they're the chief bootstrapper of their book of business. They truly own it. So modern sales organizations need entrepreneurial sellers because entrepreneurial sellers, they think differently and they think like owners. And there is one skill set that rises above all the rest that we have an opportunity to help develop. Forbes did a study of 2,600 entrepreneurs. And what they were trying to get to, they were trying to unlock what's that one skill that sits above all the rest, because there are a lot of skills that entrepreneurs need. As an entrepreneur, I can totally attest to that. Many of your agents are entrepreneurs. Your territory managers need to be thinking of themselves as entrepreneurs. But what Forbes dug into with 2,600 entrepreneurs, and all of these entrepreneurs, the one thing they had in common was that they were all million-dollar business owners. They had to get to at least that level of success to be included in this study. So all the different skill sets that an entrepreneur needs to be successful, the one that rises to the top is vision. Entrepreneurs are able to look out into the future and craft a vision. And then, interestingly enough, they can also get tactical and work their way back on how to execute that vision at 1 year, 3 year, and 5 year increments. So vision is one thing that needs to be included in our sales training in order to help our sales organizations become more entrepreneurial. So let's talk a little bit about what that looks like in real life, in practice. So a modern seller sees themselves, they are a territory CEO. They're a vision builder. They're the chief vision builder. And so I talked a little bit about that survey of entrepreneurs running businesses in excess of $1 million. So with our modern sellers, they need to be creating a vision that is several years out and then building fluid strategies to help them accomplish that vision. For someone who's in a modern sales leader role, one of their skill sets needs to be looking at their larger territory from that macro view. So you have a territory sales manager, perhaps somebody who is looking at multiple territories, and they need to take that bigger macro view, because that macro view is going to help them uncover patterns, uncover things that are happening across their territory to help find maybe new markets, supporting markets. In the new sales economy, this is the new acquisition piece of it. Are we getting into new markets? Are we innovating into new markets? So they have to be asking the bigger picture question of their individual teams to help them craft their vision. And then they're looking to see how each individual seller's vision is lining up to the company's vision. So imagine, as a practitioner, a training practitioner, that within your sales training, you have a vision planning strategy that sits in a couple places. The front end on your needs analysis, so really understanding what vision our leaders have and how can we as trainers help translate that in the classroom or via online. And then in your learning programs, where it is actually experiential and they are creating their vision that is lining up to their territory plans, to their quota, et cetera. So it all starts to tie together in terms of business value and in terms of ROI. So that's a little bit about entrepreneurial in practice. So about 11 minutes left here, 10 minutes left. I have 3 more to get through, so we will work our way through these pretty quickly here. A modern sales organization is also holistic. A modern seller knows that they have a finite amount of reserves when it comes to energy, discipline, time, motivation. These are finite, non-renewable resources in a given day. But they know their choices that they make about how they use those resources will determine their success. And how can we, as training professionals, sales enablement professionals, help them map those out, help them think differently about how they're spending their day? Because the mindset of the holistic sales producer is a mindset of productivity. Going back to our sales teams and probably many of us on the line feeling overwhelmed. Many times we feel overwhelmed. We have so many things coming at us, it starts to become cloudy as to what we should be prioritizing. And when we realize that we have this finite amount of energy, discipline, time, and motivation, it can be a game changer in the choices that we make about how we invest that time. So the skill set then is around directing our reserves at the rocks in the new sales economy. What are the biggest things I need to be accomplishing? And rocks is probably a familiar term from some of the work of Stephen Covey, but it is, when we think about the rocks that we focus on, most of us are focusing on the sand and the pebbles, and that tends to fill our days and weeks, and then we aren't left with a whole lot of time to focus on our rocks. So as training professionals, we can be crafting that into our programs. So let's talk about what that looks like in practice here. For modern sellers, and I'd say probably for most of us, it's knowing when to reset. There was one seller that I interviewed for the book, and he's selling this brand new service for his firm. If any of you are working with teams that are going into new markets or selling new services, you probably know how to do that. And right now, for this guy, it was all very new, lots more no's than yeses. It was building just visibility for his product and service. So it's just pretty tough in the amount of rejection, having to keep the right mindset to keep going. So for him, and I thought this was a great idea and something that I'm trying to do, when he starts to hit that wall, he resets. He resets, because negativity cannot bleed into one interaction to the next. Can't bleed into one to the next. So for him, his reset is a workout. Clears his mind, eliminates stress. It helps him get back to a better frame of mind. So for the modern sales leader, in the role of coach, helping team members to more intentionally design their days. This helps get the most high-value activities up on that priority list. And in the book, I outline a number of lists and strategies to help leaders and their teams design their days with greater intention and greater focus. And then for those of us in sales enablement and learning and development, how do we build options into our programs that incorporate more activity, more mindfulness? Are you doing that? There's growing data and also anecdotal evidence pointing that to this type of focus, this physical activity, this mindfulness piece, leading to greater overall productivity and bottom line results. The way that we're building our programs, are we building this in? Are we making that space for our producers, for our sales leaders? The modern sales organization is social. If you look at any P&L, I highly doubt that you will see a line item on it about social capital, about relationships, but organizations and people that get it know that the value of their relationships is also equal to the value of their results and also to their personal satisfaction. Social capital is the most valuable currency in the new sales economy. And those of us that get it know that we have to focus on this connectivity, on this relationship piece. So the skill set becomes developing our network ecosystems, our centers of influence and strategic alliances. Those are how we're going to uncover more opportunities more quickly, whether that's in a digital space or if it's offline, the old-fashioned way in person, which I tend to prefer. But we have to develop that network ecosystem and those centers of influence and those strategic alliances to uncover and accelerate our opportunities. So let's talk a little bit about what this looks like. What social looks like from a modern seller perspective, expanding relationships amongst multiple groups. So going back to that decision maker by committee trend, this can help offset that. So this is going beyond internal relationships sometimes and getting into external relationships. Think about external influencers, thought leaders, community leaders. Think about getting beyond the silos that we tend to spend our time in where we think our decision makers are. And on that topic of offline and online, a modern seller is always looking to take key relationships and bring them more into an offline realm. Even if the relationship started online, the more that we can bring those key relationships into an offline realm, the more that we have an opportunity to create that connection with that influencer, with that decision maker, with that group, whoever that is. For modern sales leaders, this skill set is about consistent focus and often focused beyond the immediate perceived decision maker and deeper into the business. So it's the coaching element where every sales leader is working with their team on specific opportunities, the ones that are most important to their book of business, and making sure that they're building those key relationships, influencer maps, role maps, whatever that might look like in your organization. So are we mapping buyer roles and influence so that we're not missing some key relationships? And the sales leader can take that different lens with a producer and help them to map that out, especially for your really important key opportunities. And then for modern sales enablement and L&D, these are tools that can be implemented into your training programs and even in your CRM, especially if you're in sales enablement and you have interface with the CRM. Putting these kinds of relationship maps and tools into those places so that they are used more often, and especially for key opportunities, can help sales leaders and producers accelerate their relationship building. So we get out of the more one-dimensional relationship building, and it helps us create the discipline to build relationships both wide and deep when we're mapping them. All right, home stretch. Here's the last one. A modern sales organization is full of ambassadors. If there was one word that kept coming up for me over and over again when I was doing this work for the book, it was this idea that the most successful sellers and sales leaders, they are ambassadors. They are a bridge. They're a bridge between themselves and their prospects and clients, a bridge to the community, a bridge even internally. They know how to build those relationships. And they have this way of being able to balance their personal brand and the company's brand because they're in alignment. They are people that really just stand out. They're almost a little bit famous, if you will. You know who they are in your organization or in your community because they've been able to embody what's important about your organization and what's important to them individually, and they blend those together. The mindset of an ambassador is a mindset of lifetime value. they're able to get beyond that initial win. They see it as a springboard. So that new acquisition statistic that we were talking about earlier, that 60%, that's just step one in what is hopefully a very long-term relationship, because then they take long-term thinking and that wins out over the short term so that they can then build that client into with more lifetime value and be able to extend the relationship. So all that work that they did to win, they don't just see it as that point in time, they expand. And one of the skill sets is co-creation. Co-creating solutions with a prospect or client is one way that you know an ambassador is at play. They are not creating solutions or solving problems in a vacuum. They are actively collaborating with a client or a prospect because that's how they get the best information, and that is how they can increase their odds of winning the business. So for those of us in sales enablement, in training, teaching to that co-creation skill in our programs. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a moment. So let's talk about what this looks like in practice. So I've just mentioned that the modern seller goes beyond the initial sale. They take the long view on the relationship. And they are willing to look beyond that initial sale. They will typically map out the lifetime value of that client, and they know where they need to go next. And I'm going to talk about how we can support that in a moment. Our sales leaders are also needing to become ambassadors because they're the internal connection. I see them as the internal connection. That's where they can make the most impact for their teams, helping their teams to become more successful by having great relationships internally and then also with key clients. They're that leadership connector between their teams and across the organization so that their teams can go out and do greater work for the client. You know the sales leader who is a great blocker and tackler for their teams and helps remove obstacles so that their teams can be better. That's one trait of an ambassador sales leader. And then lastly, how can we support this? So modern sales enablement and L&D, we can model this example by connecting sales, marketing, and learning together. Are we including these teams all together in our initiatives? Sales and marketing are becoming much more aligned. That's a trend. Whether or not that might be happening in your organization is another conversation, but sales and marketing in general, because of technology, are becoming more aligned. So are we the connectors between those conversations? Are we reaching across these departments? Are we spending time with customers? We're also that bridge. So the more that we live at that intersection of customers and our sales teams, it gives us the edge in designing strategies and programs that make a difference. All right, so here's where we can take some action before we close up for the morning, for the afternoon. So putting this into practice, of all the things that I've talked about for the last 40 minutes, think about the dimensions of the modern producer, the modern organization that you have today. Where are you really strong? And then thinking about what dimensions need to be built, whether it's within ourselves or within our organizations. Where do we have some opportunities? And then what's one strategy, just one, that we take from the last 40 minutes together? What's something that you can put into your sales training programs or perhaps even your leadership development programs today as a result of our conversation? So some ways for you to put it into practice. And then lastly, I wanted to make an offer to all of you. If you got value out of today's conversation, you can get all the slides for today. There are some bonus slides that I did not review today or I did not go through that you can also get access to. If you'd like today's slides and you would like a free chapter from the Modern Seller, it's the social chapter. So the social mindset, you can see just on screen, you can just very quickly text to that number that you see on screen, text Amy Franco, and we will make sure that you get both. So I'll leave that up here for a moment to give you an opportunity to do that. And then I just wanted to thank you for this opportunity to be with you, and I will go ahead and turn it back over to Sandy.
Amy, thank you so much for sharing your time and talents today. I tell you what, that Modern Seller book can't come out fast enough. And one of the things I appreciated so much about your presentation today is you gave us a picture of what it looks like to be agile, to be entrepreneurial, to be holistic, to be social, to be an ambassador. So I know this is a presentation that I'm going to have to watch again, and I'm going to have to read the book. Lots of great, great information. And before you dash off, I'm hoping the people that are still on the line, if you have questions, you can raise your hand and I'll unmute your line. If you feel more comfortable typing it into the question box, but share, as Amy invited you to do, what's one strategy that you think you're going to try, or what's one area of the 5, agile, entrepreneurial, holistic, social, or ambassador, would you like to work on? I just want to get a sense from those that are still here, because obviously this information was valuable to you. So let us know. Type it into the question box. So thanks again, Amy. We'll just stay on the line a few more moments. I'm definitely going to be texting Amy Franco to 66866. All right.
Thank you. Happy to stay as long as we have questions and chat. Perfect.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I loved the social one, and for L&D professionals, it's joining site, right? You know, because you start online through webinars and you hear ideas, and maybe you read our posts that come out of our LinkedIn group. We have a LinkedIn group if you want to connect that way as well, and then hopefully we get to meet you in person at a live conference. So. Yeah. All right.
There's nothing more important than that in-person connection. We can just do so much together in person.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I want to thank Leonardo. He says he likes the idea of ambassador, a bridge or connector to other parts of the organization. I can see how this concept could be applied to underwriter roles and training. Awesome.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And then Deborah says, I've always believed that the entrepreneurial aspect is key to sales, must be developed in in the sales force. Ownership, trained to the skills of an owner. Yeah, I like that.
And to just very quickly to add to that last comment, there's some research. I believe it's out of the University of Chicago, and I'm not going to remember the 2 names, but if you Google this, Google University of Chicago and entrepreneurial selling, and you will find some white papers that are specific to the differences between entrepreneurial selling and what we know as traditional B2B selling. So just some extra research for you.
There was another gal you mentioned, Carol. What was her last name again?
Carol Dweck, D-W-E-C-K, Carol Dweck.
D-W-E-C-K.
She's from Stanford.
Okay, because I wanted to look her up too, and she talks about mindset, right, Carol?
Yeah, so her research is in the area of growth mindset versus fixed mindset, and so she has a good body of research on that.
Yeah. So entrepreneurial selling, the Polsky Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation at the University of Chicago, right?
That's
probably,
the one. Yep.
Yeah. Good. I'm going to check out both of these. All right. Well, I think we had no one raise their hand, no more comments coming in. But Brian, thanks. He says, for international listeners, how can we get the slides in free chapter? So can you text?
Oh, good question.
Yeah.
This texting service does not work internationally. If you would like to put your email into the chat, we'll follow up with you personally and send you the slides.
Yeah, and I'll make sure, Brian, that your email gets to Amy. Great.
Yes, we'll take care of that. Thank you.
Yeah, and we have it as part of your registration too. So if you didn't want it, okay, I got it there. Good. All right. Well, great. You guys have a great rest of your day and weekend. And again, Amy, thank you. Great information. We've got to have you back as a keynote at one of our site conferences in the future, for sure.
Absolutely. I would love to spend more time with you so we could talk about that at some time in the future.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Take care. Signing off now.